Welcome, everybody, back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, coming to you live on October the 2nd now, a day before we officially start Week 5. And what a way to not only start the month, but get going into Week 5, right? Because yesterday, massive news broke in the NFL with Davante Adams approaching the Las Vegas Raiders about requesting a trade. Now, we're still some time away from the trade deadline, but that's something we just have to talk about, obviously, into all those details on that situation. Also looking at the potential landing spots for him as well. And also, later on in the show, we have some more topics to get to regarding Jaden Daniels, the Commanders, Caleb Williams, and the Cleveland Browns. So stay tuned for all of that on today's show. And before we get started, like I always do, I like to give you guys a quick reminder. If you want to get involved in the show in any sort of way, if you got a question, an opinion, or just a comment you want to share on today's show, please don't hesitate to do that. We want to hear about it. Your input and insight is a big part of what makes this show great. So don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that just by using the new Super Chat feature. The new Super Chat feature you're able to use it just by clicking the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. This way, it guarantees that I see your message, comment, or question on today's show, and I could get it on air, and we could talk about it. Anything you guys like to say, point out, or anything like that, use the Super Chat feature we have available to you guys now. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as exciting and as interactive as possible. So with that, now we could get finally into this Davante Adams craziness, right? Because you know what's funny? Like, as much as the NFL is great, and I love that we're not even in the thick of things yet. We're still pretty early in this process, but the NFL season is great. Fall is awesome with all these sports and the NFL obviously going on. But I don't think I get as much like joy or just sudden burst of energy like something like this happening, right? A trade request or a blockbuster trade happening. Some things like this really just hit different, I think, and no other situation can get that much bigger than this Davante Adams one because of the magnitude of player that we're talking about and how it could shape whatever team he goes to, because I do think he is going to end up leaving. It could shape the magnitude, the trajectory of any of the teams that he decides to go to. So that's what makes it so, I guess, high risk in a way. And that's what really is exciting for me. I really do find joy in seeing these trades and these things pop up in the NFL. But this piece of news broke yesterday from the NFL Network that reported that Davante Adams approached the Las Vegas front office yesterday and informed them that he did prefer to be traded before the trade deadline, obviously on November the 5th. And additionally, according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the Raiders are increasingly open to dealing Davante Adams as well. So it's not like he's trying to force his way out. It seems like the Raiders are pretty open to exploring that option before the trade deadline. And they've already, according to this report, have been reaching out to teams to try and gauge their interest level in potentially acquiring Davante Adams, right? Bringing in that huge contract, the compensation going the other way. All of that is in the earliest of stages as of right now. And with that being said, nothing is imminent or anything like that. It's not like, at least from our knowledge of the situation, nothing is on the verge of happening, but it certainly feels like it's a very hot topic right now. It's a very, sensitive topic that could just happen at any given point. I don't expect this to take that long. But we'll see right now. It only broke yesterday, so I feel like the earliest could be Friday or something like that. Usually things like this happen towards the weekend, so we'll keep an eye on that. But more on this situation, we had ESPN's Adam Schefter reporting that Las Vegas would be looking for anything around, in terms of compensation, anything around a second-round pick and additionally some more draft compensation as well. So it's not like you have to move a lot of things to try and get Davante Adams. A second round pick for a lot of teams, depending on their circumstance, their situation, win now mode, as it has been thrown around recently. A second round pick could vary in terms of value. And again, if you're going to a high ranking team, a team that has high aspirations, a second round pick could be something like in the 60s or 50s or something like that. So it depends what kind of team you're talking about with these trade talks. So it doesn't seem like it is going to take a lot to move Davante Adams or acquire him up until this point, and it all seems very quick and like it could happen very easily, which is a very quick transition from where we were, I think, just a couple weeks ago. And just a recap of how we got here, because I think it's important to point out some of the things that have transpired to kind of see this sudden change from Davante Adams. And to some people who might not know too much about it, I thought it would be good to fill everybody in. So, you know, it kind of started last week. I think some people believe that it was a little bit weird, a little bit fishy that Davante Adams just popped up randomly on the Raiders injury report last week with a hamstring injury. There wasn't any signs or anything like that of him being injured, but he was on there that day. And, some people felt like it was just very convenient for that to happen. And then you get news like this, right? People go back and look at that and think, like maybe he wasn't really that injured, right? Some people believe that. I didn't really think too much of it. I came on here and reported it as or talked about it as a real injury. So, I didn't really think too much of it, but that's a piece of the story that people are rolling with. Then also the most new generation, new way of taking in media, right, was the Instagram post by Sports Illustrated. I'm not sure if a lot of you guys saw it or how many of you did see it, but there was a post on Instagram by Sports Illustrated asking like a rhetorical question, a serious question maybe, of whether or not Davante Adams having played his last snap already for the Las Vegas Raiders. And you see things like that all the time, I feel like Bleacher Report, ESPN maybe, like all these things on social media, right? You see questions like that and you don't really think too much of it, but underneath the actual picture of the post, you see who's liked it, right? Obviously. And right there in front of everybody, you could see that none other than the head coach of the Raiders saw that post, not only saw that post, but liked it. And of course it blew up, right? Everybody is very on track with all those things, right? Social media, when somebody removes someone from their bio or anything like that, when someone likes another guy's picture or starts following somebody else, it's impossible not to see that now in this day and age. Andre, how you doing? Do you think the Jets should go for him? That is the question, obviously. And I think that's the most obvious one. That's the one I most likely think is going to happen, that he's going to just go to the Jets. It makes the most sense. It's the most obvious one. And, it's like, where else would he go if he really is chasing a championship, right? What other team is in more of a win-now mode than the Jets? Some people might not even think Aaron Rodgers is going to be on the team after this year or the year after that. So they have a short window here. Why not go out and get Davante Adams? So, yes, I do think the Jets should go and get him. I think it's too obvious not to. And, that has been the rumor, right, with the Jets surrounding this offseason and things like that. They have been one of the more obvious teams there to try and go after Davante Adams. But also, there was that Instagram post, like I said. I truly think that stuff matters because you get developments like this with teams, with the head coach, of all people, liking the post. I think makes it even worse, in my opinion. But that was even still before Davante Adams officially requested a trade. Plus, you have all the problems, I think, with the Las Vegas Raiders, right? Also, Andre said, me personally, I definitely think the Raiders should sell him before he loses all value. He is getting older. Yes, and obviously he's getting older, but I don't think that's such a negative connotation with Adams, meaning that, I think he's 32, 31 years old, but I feel like he still has a very good 2 years, maybe even 3 years left in the NFL at the level that he is right now. And yes, I think the Raiders should sell now because this has been made too much of a mess now to kind of go back on. With this, and since the time he's been there, there's been the issue with Derek Carr, them moving on from him. Maybe Davante Adams wasn't too happy about that. Then last year, a complete disaster with Jimmy Garoppolo. Josh McDaniels, the head coach, that all blew up in their face. And now this year, Gardner Minshew, doesn't really move the needle too much for the Raiders, and they've just been kind of plateauing at the same level. And for a guy like Davante Adams, you mentioned the age, really the last thing he has yet to achieve is that Super Bowl. So I think that's really the driving force behind all of this. The idea of wanting to win right now, wanting to truly compete, and all this other extra distractions and just BS, for the lack of a better term, that I can use right now, that surrounds the Raiders, it seems like each season, with comments and things like this off the field. I think he's just had enough of it, and he really just wants to go back to competing again, right? It's been a couple years now since he's been with the Packers and competing for NFC championships, right? He wants to get back to that. He obviously acknowledges his age, so that to me is the biggest driving force, because like I said, this all has kind of happened in a whirlwind. At the beginning of the season, there were still these rumors, and he said that he's just focused on the Las Vegas Raiders. He didn't want to hear about any of these rumors, but now, about like 4 to 5 weeks later, now he wants to leave. So it is kind of crazy how all this has sort of turned, and maybe that was the last straw. I don't know, with the Instagram post. It seems kind of silly when you bring it up, but Davante Adams, and this is the last thing I'll say, brought it up, I think, yesterday when he was on the Up and Adams show. He said that he saw it. He obviously saw how it blew up, but also how still Antonio Pierce had not reached out to him. And that's why I think things like this matter, right? Yeah, some people might think that social media isn't anything to take seriously, but Davante Adams clearly felt some sort of way about Antonio Pierce liking the post and then still not clarifying anything with him afterwards. That's why I think it validates why these things matter now. It looks silly, it sounds silly, but clearly there's a little bit of uneasiness there. He goes and requests a trade now, and that's where we are right now. On October the 2nd, if Davante Adams is going to find a new team, I truly think he's going to move on now. And where he ends up going, that's what we'll discuss in the next segment. We're going to be looking at the 5 to 6 potential landing spots for Davante Adams that I think make the most sense. The Jets are going to be included in there, Andre, so stay tuned for that. We'll be right back after this short break.